Great, thanks, Erin. So hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Schroeder. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a student recruiter advisor based at the Vancouver campus. You can ask me any questions about engineering or any other program even across both of our campus communities. So I would like to start our session today before we jump into all things engineering admissions by acknowledging that UBC's Vancouver campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam peoples, and UBC's Okanagan campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation and their peoples. The lands that both UBC campuses are situated on have always been a place of learning for First Nations peoples, who for millennia have passed on history, culture, language, and traditions from one generation to the next on these lands. And when we say the word unceded, it is to acknowledge that over 100 years ago, UBC's Vancouver campus was built upon Musqueam land without compensation or consent. So when we're opening our events with a land acknowledgement, we do so as a way of showing our intentions to carry ourselves during that event, but also in our work in a positive way that's mindful of the need for truth-telling and reconciliation. So we're going to go through a lot of information in today's session. If you want any links to anything or anything like that, I can definitely supply those before I hop off the call. You'll also get contact information for me as well. So this doesn't have to be the last point of contact that you have with me. We'll have a little bit of time for some Q&A, hopefully at the end of the presentation, but also you can definitely follow up with me after today as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to first take a look at the ways that you can actually join UBC. So you can see direct entry, transfer, and pathway programs are here on this slide here. So going straight into university after high school is often referred to as direct entry, and you'll see that on our website. So just in case you're wondering what that actually means, that means applying directly from high school to UBC. And it's often thought of as the most common pathway to get to UBC. However, transfer that you see there in the middle is also a great option to consider too. So for those who are interested in a transfer pathway, or maybe you're considering some different options or alternative options outside of UBC, students do have the option to complete first year requirements at another university or college, and then transfer or try and transfer as many of those credits to UBC to finish out the degree at UBC. So UBC also has some great pathway programs for different types of learners. So for example, we have the engineering transfer partnerships. And if you haven't checked those out, I highly recommend that you check out the transfer pathways programs information on each of the faculty websites for both Okanagan and for Vancouver. It gives the full detailed information of those options. And I know Erin is hosting a transfer session during this event, so she's an expert on these as well, but they're a fantastic way to learn more about ways that you can start at another institution and finish at UBC. And graduate with a UBC Bachelor of Applied Science. So that's one option to consider. There are bridging programs for Indigenous students like the Aboriginal Access Studies program. And then there's also Vantage College for international students who are newer to the English language. So there are some great ways to join UBC. It doesn't necessarily have to be through direct entry. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of admissions information here. And let's talk about how to actually apply to UBC. So step one, as you can see here, is knowing what you want to study. So the fact that you're here at this engineering open house event suggests that you might be considering applying for a Bachelor of Applied Science at UBC, which is UBC's engineering degree. So the first step that you're going to need to do is figure out what you actually want to apply to and narrow down all of the different options that you might be considering at UBC to two choices. So you are going to be able to pick a first choice degree program and campus, and then a second choice degree program and campus within the application to UBC. And I'll talk a lot more about that as we actually go into submitting the application in a few slides time, but you will pick a first choice degree program and campus and a second choice degree program and campus. And that means that you're going to be, say, applying for the Bachelor of Applied Science, the Okanagan campus first choice, and then maybe the Bachelor of Applied Science, Vancouver as your second choice. It doesn't have to be the same degree and it doesn't have to be at the same campus. You can mix and match. And you are going to want to make sure that you rank those two programs. We'll also talk about that when we get closer to the actual submitting of the application. But you'll only be considered for your first choice degree program and campus first. And then only if you're unsuccessful with that first choice program would you be considered for your second choice. And again, we'll revisit that topic in a few minutes time. So let's start by taking a look at what academic options are available at UBC, specifically in relation to engineering. So again, you're only applying to the actual overall degree, the Bachelor of Applied Science, and then picking a campus. So Bachelor of Applied Science at Okanagan, Bachelor of Applied Science at Vancouver, when you submit your actual admissions application to UBC. So what you see here with what we offer, these are referred to as specializations. So it's still super important that you know what's available at each of the two campuses as far as specializations go, but you don't need to have a particular specialization in mind when you submit your admissions application. The application or declaration process, depending on which campus you go to, is actually going to take place at the end of your first year. So getting into any of these specializations will take place at the end of your first year at UBC, not something you need to decide on right now. But again, it's great to know what's available at each of the two campuses so that you can know what options would be available to you once you get to that point in your first year at UBC. If anyone is curious, I am going to rattle off the names of these in just a second, but if anyone is curious about learning more about which courses you would actually take within these specializations, or just sort of comparing and contrasting the structure across the two campuses or anything like that, our you.ubc.ca website has a section called Programs, and you can filter by degree. So you can filter by Bachelor of Applied Science, and it will bring up all of these options you're looking at right now for specializations. You can click into each one, and it will actually give you a diagram of the different courses that you would take across your first year, second year, third year, and fourth year at the UBC. So I'm a very visual person, and I find that to be a nice way to visualize what each of these would actually involve if you were to join them at the end of your first year at UBC. So you can see here civil engineering, computer engineering, electrical engineering, manufacturing engineering, and mechanical engineering are all offered at the Okanagan campus. And then all 5 of those specializations are also offered at the Vancouver campus with 9 additional options as well. So this is, again, a lot of information to absorb in one slide. Definitely take a moment. You can screenshot this or take a picture of it. But you can also refer back to this information on the faculty websites, but also that you.ubc.ca website too. So once you've had a chance to explore all those different academic options that are available, whether you're only considering the Bachelor of Applied Science that we just looked at before, or whether you want to use that program section of our website to explore all 250 different academic options available at UBC, you can definitely spend some time doing that. But once you've narrowed it down to your top 2, you are going to start to determine whether you're eligible for those. So the next thing to do is to actually research the admissions requirements for the degree program and campuses, degree programs and campuses potentially that you're hoping to apply to. So I'll show you a resource in just a moment to help you see what those requirements actually look like for you. So you're going to visit you.ubc.ca. And there is a section at the top, and it says Apply to UBC. Select that. Admissions requirements, select that, and then Canadian high school students. If you're an IB student, you're going to want to select the International Baccalaureate tab when you get to that point, and it will populate your admissions requirements. But essentially, once you land in the right spot, you're going to see that it brings you, and hopefully you can see my mouse, to this section here. So you're going to be able to see that there are 2 campuses located at the top here. So you can actually toggle back and forth to see the requirements across the 2 campuses. You're going to be able to pick your province or territory that you're currently studying in so that all of the admissions requirements are populating correctly for where you're actually submitting your application from. And then also picking the degree requirements. So for example, you could pick BC and the Bachelor of Applied Science, and it will populate the requirements for that. And we're actually going to look at those in just a second in the next slide. But one thing I do want you to take note of is that the admissions requirements are not necessarily exactly the same across the 2 campuses, even if it's the same degree program. So it's always best to double check that you're actually reviewing the right information for what you're considering applying to within this tool so that you're preparing your application accordingly and you know which degree programs you're actually eligible for. I'd also like to point out that there is an English language admission requirement. You can meet that in 9 different ways, and every single applicant does need to meet that. For the majority of our applicants, they're going to meet that requirement by having studied in Canada for 4 consecutive years prior to applying to UBC. But if that's not the case for your situation, not to worry, check out that section. You can see all 9 ways, or if you have any questions about your eligibility for meeting that requirement, you can always email me and I can give you some more feedback as well. There's also some general admissions requirements that you'll see here. Those are going to populate when we look at the next slide as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the next slide here. All right, so if you were to populate this website tool using BC, and I know not everybody that's here today is necessarily in BC, but just for the sake of giving an example of what you would see populating, you can see that BC, you would pick your province or territory here, Bachelor of Applied Science, and we're looking at Vancouver campus requirements here on the left and Okanagan campus requirements here on the right. So you can see that while the requirements are similar, they are different as well. So it's important to check those requirements across the 2 campuses to gauge your eligibility. And you can see here all of the different required courses for grade 12, grade 11, that will populate for any degree. If anyone's considering applying to a degree that's not engineering, those will populate there. Grade 12 requirements, and then you'll see a section called related courses at the bottom. And we'll speak a little bit about what those are in a bit more detail in a few slides' time. But essentially, these are not required courses for admission, but they are seen as indicators of your ability to be academically successful in the degree program using related course content. So they are looked at as sort of the second tier of importance in terms of the courses that you've taken to prepare you for success at UBC's Bachelor of Applied Science. So those will also change depending on the degree that you're applying to, as well as potentially the campus as well. So definitely check out that you.ubc.ca. Now, if you are an IB student, I mentioned this before, you're going to find that your course requirements are listed in the correct sort of terminology, HL, SL, that sort of thing, for your IB diploma program. All right, so we've done step 1, we've done step 2, and now we're on step 3, which is actually submitting the application to UBC. So before I jump into all of the sort of specific information we're going to go through with the application itself, I do just want to mention, and maybe some of you who are here tonight have already done this, but please do register for one of our online application workshops. They're hosted weekly, they're online, it's completely anonymous, it's camera off. There will be discussion and participation, but it's through a platform called Slido, which allows for anonymity. And it allows students to be able to participate in all parts of the workshop while hopefully providing a safe way and an anonymous way to do so. So you can register for those just at our website, you.ubc.ca. And what we'll do is go through basically all the information I'm going to give you a very quick snapshot of in today's presentation. We go through in a lot more detail with a particular focus on the personal profile. So I'll mention more about that when we get to the personal profile section, but I highly recommend one of the online application workshops. And yet we host them at different times of day, different days of the week, each week to try and cater to different schedules and different time zones. So definitely consider registering for one of those. They're open to grade 11 and grade 12 students as well. I should mention that. All right, so submitting the application. Once you get to this point, you are going to create an account on something called Education Planner BC. So in order to apply to UBC, even if you click that Apply Now button on our website, it's going to take you to this website. So not to worry, you've landed in the right spot. This is where you need to apply. So Education Planner BC is essentially a centralized application system for BC colleges and universities. And so you're going to start off by creating an account with Education Planner BC. And then from there, it'll allow you to create your application to submit to UBC. So for anyone who is applying to more than one college or university in BC, this can be a really handy way of creating your applications because you only have to type in certain information once, and then you can send it out to multiple institutions. So it's kind of a streamlined way of being able to apply to multiple colleges or universities in BC. So you heard me mention earlier that you're going to get a first choice degree program in campus and a second choice degree program in campus. And I know that these screenshots are from a previous year, but it looks exactly the same. So I was having trouble with my test account recently to try and get an updated screenshot, but I promise it looks exactly the same. I had a colleague verify it for me. So while the date is 2022-23, it will look exactly like this. You can see your first choice degree program is listed there on the left, and the second choice is there on the right. They actually sit on top of each other if you're looking in the application, but this is what it's going to look like when you're actually making that selection. So you're going to pick your campus in that first drop-down box. Then you're going to pick the term. So you would pick winter 2024. And then you would say that you can pick your degree program. So Bachelor of Applied Science, parentheses engineering, is what you would choose if you were hoping to select the engineering program at UBC. So that's a nice visual to hopefully explain that first choice, second choice a little bit better. And remember that you are going to need to rank your choices according to your preference. So your first choice program really should be your true first choice, since that's what you're going to be considered for first. Then only if you're unsuccessful will you be considered for your second choice program. Now, in case anyone is interested in applying to a degree outside of engineering, the degrees don't have to be the same. Just for this presentation, they're the same, but they don't have to be the same. You could have first choice Bachelor of Arts, Okanagan, second choice Bachelor of Applied Science Engineering at Vancouver. Like, you can mix and match across different degree programs and campuses according to what you actually want to apply for. But what you see here, with one choice being Vancouver and one choice being Okanagan, is not an uncommon thing if someone really has their heart set on pursuing engineering at UBC. All right, so once you get to this point, you've created your profile, you've typed in your choices, you're going to type in some other information about academics and a personal profile, which I'll go through in more detail in just a moment. And once you go through that process, get everything typed in, you're going to hit submit, pay an application fee, and off it goes. So what happens? What are we actually looking at? What is actually involved in submitting a UBC application online? You're going to submit information about your academic profile, so your academic performance, as well as supplementary information, which for the engineering degree programs at UBC comes in the form of the personal profile, which is the case for most degree programs at UBC. And then we put those two things together in order to have a more holistic overall evaluation of your application. So grades are not the only thing we are considering. So let's talk a little bit more about the grades and the academic profile. So it does look at your courses and grades, but also considers a few other things as well. And just for reference, in case you do want to go back and review any of the sort of general areas that we're looking at in the academic profile, this is on our website as well. So I know I always like to have a point of reference to go back to. So things like, did you pursue all of your academic interests by taking a range of different courses and subjects? Did you challenge yourself academically by taking academic courses that may have been advanced or maybe first-year university courses, or IB courses, AP courses? Now with that, don't worry if you go to a school where those things aren't offered. We understand that not everyone has access to those types of courses through what their school provides. So there's no expectation that you've taken something like an IB or an AP course, but if you have had the opportunity to take those, the rigor of those is going to be recognized, possibly with some first-year credit towards courses at UBC. But there's a little more information that I can answer on a case-by-case basis if you are someone who's eligible for some first-year credit. We also look at things like, did you demonstrate your knowledge in a chosen area of study by taking courses related to the degree that you applied to at UBC? So there's lots of things that we're looking at within the context of your grades and the courses that you took, not just looking at grades and eligibility, but looking at those things as well. And just as sort of an admin note for anyone who's applying from BC or Ontario, you do not need to submit any grade information yourself. UBC actually receives your grade information directly from the Ministry of Education, essentially. So we receive it electronically. So you don't need to do anything other than grant us permission or provide us with your OUAC number, and we'll actually obtain the results directly from your ministry and get them to UBC. If you're an IB student, we actually get in touch with your IB coordinator directly, and we get them to submit your predicted grades to UBC. All right, so just a little bit of extra context for what's looked at with engineering. So again, there's going to be a combination of the academic profile, but also the personal profile, which is the next slide. So keep that in mind. We're looking at things, as you can see here, briefly mentioned: engagement, accomplishment, leadership, substance, and voice, but we'll come back to that. We're going to look at your overall academic average. Now, please note that there is no specific grade or specific GPA that we are requiring, or IB score that we are requiring that's definitely going to get you successful admission to UBC. Because we're looking at your grades, but also the personal profile, We don't have any sort of minimum cutoffs that you need to worry about in order to be considered for admission, but you should still be trying for your best academically, because the stronger the score in a given academic area, the stronger the message is to admissions about your ability to be successful in that. But again, we're looking at lots of other pieces too. So we definitely encourage you to spend a lot of time crafting your personal profile and do well in those grade 11 and grade 12 academic courses. So when your application is actually being evaluated for admission, admissions is going to consider all grade 11 and grade 12 academic courses, regardless of which year that you took them. So focus will be on the grade 12 level courses if they're available at the time of assessment. And the core courses will include all degree-specific courses that you saw in the slide when we looked at admissions requirements, but will also include other academic areas that fall into that related category as well. So it is important to take note of all of those requirements and, like I said, keep doing your best academically, because we are going to be looking at those things. And the personal profile, I feel like I've hyped this up by mentioning it quite a few times before this point. So let's talk about it in a bit more detail. So the second piece, and this is required for all applicants to engineering, but to all degrees at UBC that are undergraduate, is the personal profile. So this is really a chance for you to tell UBC about what's important to you, whether that's your achievements, things you've learned, experiences you've had, challenges you've overcome. There are no right or wrong answers when addressing the prompts for the personal profile. So each of the prompts or questions for the personal profile are actually listed on our website, so you can view those at any time. If you're a grade 11 student, they don't tend to change that much from year to year. It's possible there could be some change, but you can still have a look now and most likely have a good idea of what you're going to need to prepare for next year. So they're always available on the website so that you can take a look in advance. So things that we encourage students to do when they're preparing their personal profile responses is to be really reflective and to remember that this is about getting to know you as a person. So there's no expected answers. There's no right or wrong answers. It's really just helping us get to know the person who's represented in the application, because you're more than just a list of courses, right? You don't go around introducing yourself by your GPA or by your IB score. You're not like, I'm number 34 or whatever it is. You are a real person. You have a name. You have all these things that make you who you are and interests that you have. And really, that's what we're trying to get to know about you through the personal profile. And so being authentic, being yourself is really a great piece of advice to have, but also making sure that you take time to do it, don't rush it, and that you are reflective. So I always feel like that's very general advice to give. And that's why I'm going to promote that application workshop so many times in this session, because it really is a powerful way to start looking at, what do I actually mean by that? What does admissions actually mean by, being reflective, showing leadership and engagement and accomplishment in my personal voice? What does that actually mean? Because we actually take a look at some samples of the personal profile. We compare and contrast different writing styles. So we get a chance to see what type of response is impacting, is providing the impact in one way or providing more insights about the applicant in other ways. And it can be a really great way to get like a real tangible example of what we actually mean by demonstrating these things in your writing responses. So again, highly recommend that you sign up for one of those. I'm actually going to be at, I think, all but one application workshop until the end of the year. So I most likely will see you there if you decide to attend one. But it's a very important and required part of your application. And again, don't rush it. Take your time. Definitely review those questions in advance on our website, and make sure that you're being true to who you are when you craft those responses. Now, one other thing I do want to bring up is collecting census data. So if you'll be applying for major entrance scholarships, deadlines for that will be coming up shortly. Or if you've signed up to learn more about upcoming UBC events, you may have come across a question, or you might come across a question as you go through that process, asking you about your ancestral background. And you might be hesitant to respond to it, but I want to reassure you that it does not affect your application for admission in any negative way. The reason that we're actually asking for that information is that we understand that no two students are the same. And understanding a bit more about you will allow the university to connect you with specific resources and services that allow for a more equitable and enjoyable university experience. So for example, if you're an Indigenous student, you'll be connected to an Indigenous student advisor And your personal profile will be read by folks who have shared your lived experience. And if you're a Black student, you'd be connected with specific advisors as well. And there are funding opportunities that you may also be able to get access to. So collecting this information also allows us here at UBC to see where we're falling short with resources for students and keeps us dedicated to our commitments to truth and reconciliation and the recognition of inequity that exists for groups that have been historically and systemically marginalized as well. So getting into some deadlines, and this is probably another one you might want to screenshot or take a picture of, depending on how you're joining us tonight. Some key deadlines that are going to be coming up in the admissions cycle. So December 1st, you can see there is the deadline to apply for scholarships and early admission. So this is our first round offer of admissions deadline, is the 1st of December. Now, this is also the deadline if you want to be considered for any entrance scholarships that UBC has available. So if you're applying to UBC for admission, you'll see within the application there is a section where you can declare whether you'd like to be considered for any of our merit scholarships. If you want to be considered for them, I highly recommend it. Who wouldn't want to get some money towards their studies, right? But basically you want to tick the box and potentially answer the follow-up question, the optional follow-up question that goes with that. So that's how you can be considered for any of the merit scholarships, which fall under an umbrella called the Presidential Scholars Awards. So we just use your admissions application for that. Now, December 1st is the admissions deadline, but also the scholarship deadline for the additional application for a financial need-based scholarship if you are hoping to be considered for that. Now, those fall under a category of scholarships called the Centennial Scholars Entrance Awards. So if you're hoping to apply for a Centennial Scholars Entrance Award, there's also an additional application that's also due by the 1st of December. So because everybody's financial need situation looks different, there is an additional application for those scholarships, and that is also due on that same December 1st deadline. So really, December 1st is the big deadline if you want to be considered for any scholarships. Now, if you apply by the 1st of December, you're also going to be considered for that first round offer of admission, right? So potentially you could be given an offer of admission earlier on. Generally, you would find out between sort of January, February, if you were successful with your first round offer of admission. But if you're not offered a first round offer of admission by the end of February, not to worry. It is the automatic process that you'll be reevaluated again in the regular round of admission. Generally, that starts from March. And that will be once we receive more grade 12 grade information, final grade information, you'll be reevaluated. So just a disclaimer that the majority of applicants do not receive a first round offer of admission. So please don't panic if it doesn't happen for you. And that's why there's already an automatic process in place to just reevaluate your application again in the regular round. There's nothing additional that you need to do for that. Now, if you're not interested in being considered for a scholarship or to be considered earlier on in the admissions timeline, you can apply by the 15th of January for the regular round offer of admission. Now, that is the final deadline to apply. So again, take note of these deadlines. Make sure that you've submitted your application either by the 1st of December or the 15th of January. Then you can see that throughout February and March, you'll see that transcripts will be requested by UBC for applicable situations, or we will obtain your grade information through your ministry if you're from BC or Ontario. We'll start collecting that information, and then you'll be informed about your offer of admission anytime, depending on when you receive it, and whether you apply in first round or regular round. You could receive your offer anytime from January until May. So it really can be quite a big time that you're waiting, but that is the general timeline to keep in mind. Now, May 1st, you can see there is the deadline to accept admission and admissions offer. So that will apply to the Vancouver campus. For the Okanagan campus, it's a slightly later deadline at the 1st of June. But that, regardless of campus, that is the deadline that you need to apply for housing by if you want to be part of the first year housing guarantee. So we have guaranteed first year housing at both of our campus communities. So we do encourage you to apply by the 1st of May in order to make sure that you definitely have that guaranteed place to live at each of our campuses. It is a separate application from admissions, so keep that in mind. And also each campus has its own housing application. So if you're applying like we saw in that screenshot where one of your choices is the Vancouver campus Bachelor of Applied Science and one of your choices is the Okanagan Bachelor of Applied Science, then you're going to want to fill out 2 different housing applications potentially if you are hoping to apply before you receive an update about your offer of admission. Let me know if there's any questions about that. I feel like I gave quite a roundabout explanation of that today. June and July, you're going to be registering for your standard timetable. So I'll definitely, if there's questions about what the standard timetable involves, I'm going to defer to Erin since she's here today, and we can get to those when we do open up for the Q&A. And then in September, that's when you're actually going to join us. You're going to join in for things like Imagine UBC and Create Day, which are fantastic community events on campus and a great way to get more connected with your faculty and get to know your peers within your cohort and your degree program. So super fun days. And yeah, very memorable. You always see lots of photos from those days on campus. All right. And another reminder, since that was a lot of information to absorb in one slide, final deadline to apply for admission and to be considered for scholarships at the same time is the 1st of December. So just write that one down if you missed it before. Now, there are some specific engineering scholarships. So again, 1st of December deadline, and this might be one that you want to take a screenshot of as well, because it does have a little bit more information about the engineering scholarships that sort of fall within these 2 categories of types of scholarships at UBC. So merit-based and financial need-based. So you can see there, Presidential Scholars Award that we've talked about before, up to $80,000. It can be a one-time award, or it could be renewable for up to 4 years. And the same applies for the Centennial Scholars Entrance Awards as well. And you can also see that the financial need-based applications do require that additional separate application. All right, and one scholarship that's on here, the Beyond Tomorrow Scholars Award, I do want to talk about that one in more detail. So fairly recently, UBC launched the Beyond Tomorrow Scholars Program to provide financial and institutional support for self-identifying Black Canadian students. So the program's inaugural cohort started in 2021 with 13 students, and it's open to students who self-identify as Black, and you can apply for a range of one-time and renewable scholarships of up to $80,000. The Beyond Tomorrow Scholars Program is also an incredible, dynamic, really holistic program that offers so many different things, including fostering community among Black students at the Vancouver campus, the Okanagan campus, and both campuses together. And they do that through a lot of events and panel discussions, networking opportunities, and so many other activities that they host throughout the year as well. And these are open to anyone who does identify as Black Canadian, not just award recipients. So it's a fantastic way to get connected with the Black student community at UBC is through the Beyond Tomorrow Scholars Program. All right, and one more final reminder that the last day to apply to UBC is the 15th of January. So you can tell that I really want to make sure you leave today's session with all that information about those deadlines to take away today. Now I can see that I've gone over by a couple of minutes here, and so hopefully we do have a few people who we can answer some of your questions before we have to hop off and head over to the booths area. But I do want to make sure that anyone who does have questions or thinks they might have questions after today, please do jot down these contact email addresses here on the left. So recruitment.ok@ubc.ca, that will come through to me and my colleagues in student recruitment. Indigenous.recruitment@ubc.ca will get students connected with the Indigenous student recruitment team, and blackstudent.recruitment@ubc.ca, that will get you connected with my colleagues who work with Black student recruitment. So you can definitely take all 3 of those down and make sure that you know who you can connect with if you do have any other questions after today. All right, that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So I'm assuming we might have some good questions coming through. Thanks, Erin.
We do have some questions. So I kind of combined a few questions. There's a bunch of questions asking about kind of when their grades are available and what that's going to look like. So I'm going to read out a few questions for you that kind of summarizes them all. So there is, are grade 12 first term marks more important than the grade 11 final marks? For early offers of admission, are only grade 11 marks considered for admissions and not grade 12 at all? Is that consistent for applicants across Canada? If I apply for a first round offer of admission and my important grade 12 courses are in the second semester, will it affect my chances of getting in? If my chemistry and physics 12 are in my second semester, but I had physics and chem 11 already, how does that work? So kind of all the same sorts of questions. I'll let you kind of address that, Lauren.
Sounds good. Yes. And when I answer this question, if anyone has any very specific situations that they want to walk through with their courses or the way that their school has structured the school year or whatever the case is, please do email me because I want to make sure that you get the right information for your situation. But I'm going to answer broadly how it works for all of these questions kind of put together. So for first round offers of admission, we will use, generally speaking, we're going to use your grade 11 grades. So on occasion, depending on when your application is actually evaluated, if there are grade 12 grades available at that time, and by grade 12 grades, I mean final grades, only final grades will be used in that evaluation. But generally speaking, it's only grade 11 that we're going to be using for first round offers of admission. So that's the indicator of what would be seen as, or what am I trying to say? We use grade 11 grades as an indicator of what we would expect you to achieve at in grade 12. And so that's why those are used in the first round offer of admission. So again, not to worry if first round offer of admission doesn't happen for you. It doesn't happen for most applicants. So please don't panic. You'll just get reevaluated in the regular round when we do have more information from your grade 12 year. So we will use any grade 12 grade information that we have that's final at the time of the offer, or at the time your application is evaluated. So whatever is finalized from grade 11, grade 12, we're going to use as that part of that evaluation. Now, in terms of questions about the timing of courses, like if you're taking a required course in the second half of your academic year for grade 12, don't worry, that is very common. We don't expect all students to have all required courses done before grade 12 courses done at the time of evaluation. That's just not realistic for many students. So that's a very common situation to be in. So do not worry. What we would do is we would again use the grade 11 grade as an indicator of where we would expect to see you achieving in that course in grade 12 and go from there. But it's very common. Yeah, don't stress about the timing of things. Schools offer different courses at different times, and admissions is very aware of that. It's all part and parcel to how we look at things. But if you do have any more specific questions about what that looks like for you, yeah, just definitely reach out to me and we can have more of a one-on-one interaction to make sure that your course questions are answered.
Perfect. Thank you. There is a question that is asking about the recommended academic profile mark averages for UBC's engineering program. I know we get that question all the time, and I know you addressed it a little bit already. Maybe you want to just kind of clarify that for folks that are wondering more.
Absolutely. And I probably get this question at least once a day. So it's a very commonly asked question. There is no magic formula. There's no right combination of grades or anything like that that is going to be an absolute guarantee that you're going to get admission to UBC. So it really is important that you're doing your best academically, but part of why we don't pin minimum scores on the way that you're like a minimum score in a certain course or things like that is that what we're trying to get a sense of is overall, do we see that this application or this applicant would be academically successful in this degree program? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to one score, like a 93 versus a 94, right? We're looking at the overall picture of how this applicant is performing academically to get a sense of how they would achieve at UBC. And that's why there really isn't a specific number or GPA or anything like that that we tie that to. And then in addition to that is the personal profile. So someone could come through with absolutely perfect grades in every subject, and maybe they've rushed their personal profile and we're not seeing a lot of information that's impactful for their application coming through from that. So that might not be a competitive application. So we do value both the personal profile and the academic profile and putting those together to get a better sense of who you are academically and personally. So I know that's a very sort of vague answer, but I promise that really is how we do it. And if you do have any more specific questions, yeah, definitely come to one of the application workshops, because I think particularly for the personal profile, I think it helps to really see those examples and put on the hat like you're an admissions officer here at UBC, and really seeing what impact different writing styles of approaching the personal profile can have, because it can be a very powerful part of your application. But yeah, feel free to let me know in an email if you do have more specific questions from there.
And I know, Lauren, you've mentioned those application workshops several times. So everyone here tonight had to register in the same place that they'll go to register for those application workshops. So if you're going to whileu.ubc.ca, then you will see the events section and you can look up those events happening. Same place that you would have gone to register for this event today. That same account that you may have had to create for this event will be the same place that you can register for those application workshops. So definitely check that out. Another question. So are applications evaluated on a first come, first served basis, or is everyone viewed after the deadline?
So it will be a bit, it's not first come, first serve. That's what I'll definitely address that. So we do look at them after the deadline. And so it's not like, you got to apply today if you want to have a chance at getting a first round offer. Nope, the deadline will close and we will look at all applications. And we do, that's part of the way that we evaluate your application overall, is that it is competitive, but it's also comparative. So we are looking at your application individually, but also within the wider applicant pool. And in order to do that, we do need the rounds of admissions to be closed in order to fully evaluate your application. So competitive, comparative, and definitely not on a first come, first serve basis.
Perfect. Another question that does come up a lot is about references on the application. So does UBC contact their references? What sort of things do we ask them? Do they have to write a reference letter? Maybe you can just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So you will notice, and it sounds like lots of you have read that personal profile section of our website to know that references are something that we are going to ask for. Now, you do need to provide 2 references, but you just need to provide their contact information. So UBC admissions will do reference checks typically over the phone, sometimes by email, but they will get in touch with your references on a random basis. So you don't know if they're going to be contacted, but it is something that is not uncommon for them to do for many applicants, is to verify that you do have references who can speak to the areas that you've mentioned on your application. But there's no way to submit a reference letter from anyone. I've had that question quite a lot in since about weeks since the application has officially opened for UBC admissions. There's no way to submit a letter of recommendation. That is not part of what we look at. We just want the contact information so that admissions can make contact over the phone or via email to ask some follow-up questions about your involvements and just sort of checking that what you've shared on your application is true to what they know about you as a student. So it's important to pick people who can speak to the things that you decide to mention in your application, because that will be something that's like our point of reference of how we're going to follow up and ask questions to your reference.
Perfect. Maybe just a couple more questions. So we do see one about AP courses. So AP courses, and this applies for IB courses too, tend to be more difficult than regular grade 12 courses. Would UBC prefer an average grade in an AP course or a high grade in a grade 12 course?
That's an interesting question. And there's a few more follow-up questions that I would need to ask to make sure that I'm effectively answering your question. So it depends on the course you're hoping to take and whether it's required for admission for the degree program that you're hoping to go into. I'd also have some follow-up questions about whether you think you would perform well in a more challenging course, or whether taking a more challenging course would be at the detriment of your ability to perform in other courses that you're taking. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer to that question. It's about making sure that you're making the best decision for what will put you in the best academic standing overall in your grades and all your courses, than necessarily trying to give all your attention to one course that may or may not be quite so influential, depending on whether it's a required course or not. So definitely let me know if that's not enough information to address your question. Let me know what the course is that you're hoping to take, as well as which degree programs you're considering, and then I can give you some more specific feedback from there.
Perfect. Thank you. There's one more question I see that maybe I'll actually answer. So there's a question about which colleges would give me the best chance of transferring into UBC if I'm unable to get in directly. So tomorrow we are going to have a session at 10:30 a.m. all about transferring into UBC Engineering and what that looks like. We do have 9 partner institutions across BC where you can actually complete the entire first year program. So those are our engineering transfer programs. I'll add the link into your question in the reply so that you see it there. But with starting at those schools, as long as you are completing that full set of courses and a minimum GPA of 3.1 for the Vancouver campus or 2.8 for the Okanagan campus, you can be admitted directly into second year. You would still need to go through that competitive placement process at the Vancouver campus. But those are really, if you're trying to transfer, I would highly recommend going through one of those engineering transfer programs just because it's the most straightforward and will likely give you the most transfer credit. But there are also lots of other schools where you can still transfer courses. You could start in another faculty at UBC even and transfer courses into engineering. But for the easiest for you to understand everything, I would recommend those engineering transfer programs.
Definitely. I just want to add on, I endorse that 100%. Yes, definitely look into those. Are a fantastic other option to consider and still graduate from UBC.
Perfect. So I'm going to wrap up our presentation here for today. I will stick around in the stage to answer some of these questions in the Q&A. So I'll type in my responses. Feel free to come back at any point before tomorrow to check out what those responses look like to your questions. But again, you have Lauren's email. You also have my email as well on all of the kind of letting you know about how to show up to the event today. You would have received emails from me as well. So feel free to email either of us with any of your questions, and we will be happy to help you out through that process. And definitely check out one of those application workshops coming up soon throughout the fall. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening. Go check out all of those booths that are open. You can talk with all of our engineering programs to find out more about what it's like to study in those specific programs, maybe some of the options they have, other things like that as well. So there's professors there. Some will have current students, lots of ways for you to check out more about those programs themselves. They'll be open until 6:30 tonight. So go check those out. Thank you all for joining. I'm hoping to see most of you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on Saturday for the rest of our session. So thank you. Have a great night. And thank you so much, Lauren, for being here to present to everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Thanks, Erin. Have a good night.